Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julie Grant. So here's what's happening. At any minute, we expect Joran van der Sloot to be returning to the federal courthouse. He was extradited to the United States back in June. Now he's there for a change of plea hearing today. Now, this is a live look outside of the courthouse. You see an enormous media presence there. No cameras allowed inside federal courtroom, and our team is there on the ground. Some of our team members inside the courtroom, some outside, getting this shot right now. There's going to be a press conference afterward led by Natalie Holloway's family attorney and her mother. Joran van der Sloot is going to be pleading to extortion and wire fraud charges. In 2010, he promised Natalie Holloway's mother to give her information about where Natalie's remains were. And so as part of a federal sting operation, he received $25,000 wired by the Holloway family, and then the feds pinched him and were able to bring this case. And it's so smart what they've done here. They've given him this deal, but as part of it, he has to give up information that will hopefully help solve her murder case. I hope our federal government can work with the government in Aruba and pass along whatever information was shared by this guy to the Aruban police force so that perhaps one day there will be justice for her murder. Right now, this is one form of justice at least. And at least this guy's gonna remain in prison. He's already doing a long sentence of 28 years for the killing of a Peruvian woman in 2010, Miss Stephanie Flores. And so after he serves that sentence, then he would have to come back here and serve his sentence in the United States for these crimes. I want to bring in my guest, trial attorney Cannon Kearney, standing by here. Cannon, tell me, what are your thoughts on what, if anything, may happen with this information that we receive from this guy?
Well, good morning. Happy Wednesday, Julie. Always a pleasure to be here. First and foremost, let's please say thank you to the Holloway family. I'm sure they're thanking God that some form of justice is coming right now in order to ensure that their daughter, the victim of whatever occurred, is coming forthwith. As far as the defendant, how can you trust him at this point? He's an individual that seems to be very shady. He's obviously a criminal in multiple countries, so one wouldn't know that he's going to be truthful. But one is, the family at the bare minimum should be thankful that he is now in custody. He is now willing to speak. Who knows what he's going to say, but prayerfully, it will bring about a body. It will bring about some form of closure for the Holloway family.
Yes, we certainly hope so. Cannon Kearney, thank you kindly. We're going to keep an eye on everything happening at the federal courthouse. Again, 10:30 a.m. Eastern was the scheduled time for his appearance, so should be happening any minute. We're going to return to Florida right now, in Orlando, Florida. The defense team for David Tronis is making an argument for a motion for a judgment of acquittal, wanting the case to end right here and not go to the jury. I think it's going to be denied. Let's listen to what is left of the defense argument, and then we're going to hear from the state in response.
Sometime after 3 o'clock, immediately before he called 911, which I recall correctly was sometime around 3:50 that afternoon. He goes to the downstairs door, the bottom of that stairwell, see if she's on the phone, which was her routine according to Lori, according to Samantha, according to Mr. Tronis in his interview. Listens to see if he hears Shanti on the phone, but what he hears is water running. Goes up the stairs, finds his wife in a terrible position, and he starts to try to give her aid. What he describes is that she was difficult to move. There are a number of different variations of how her body was. It was very difficult to understand in the interview because he's in a paper suit. They never asked him to physically demonstrate how she was, but you heard what he told, I think it was Officer McKnight, which was that part of her body, her lower half was out of the tub, her upper half was in the tub. By all accounts, she was prone, meaning face down, and her face and hair were in the water. You heard from Dr. Utz, who talked about the fact that the blood pooling in the eyes, the blood that you could see around her face at the time that she was located in the residence, was consistent with someone being prone for a period of time, that would have caused blood to pool in her face on its own, absent and apart from the other injuries. He indicates that he has to drag her. He's unable to lift her, so he has to drag her to the area where she was ultimately found, which was on the left side of the bed, between the bed, the workstation, and the sofa. That accounts for the drag marks on her knees. And if you look at those drag marks, there's not a significant amount of blood in those drag marks, which would tend to indicate that at the time that he drug her, that she was already deceased. After realizing he can't revive her, he calls 911. None of the forensic findings, none of the findings in the crime scene are inconsistent with that. There's blood on the mattress pad and the carpet. That's what you would expect when a person trying to revive a person who has been attacked places them on that area. The blood that had been pooling in the tub is now draining from her body and her hair, creating the blood spots on either side of that mattress pad. The medical examiner, Dr. Utz, testified that the petechiae in her eyes could occur from positional asphyxia, and he described how that sometimes occurs when a person, because maybe they're unconscious or something along those lines, is not able to move, so they can't move their diaphragm. And he described that it can occur like in a car accident, or when a person, he described an intoxicated person falling, hitting their head, and then slumping over something like a toilet or a bathtub and not being able to move their diaphragm in order to breathe. He said that that could cause petechiae, that could account for the blood in the tissues of the eyes, that it could just be from being in that prone position for a period of time. It could also account for her positioning from the slight rigor that had started to set in her arm that was lifted and flexed. And then we have to talk about the timeline. So, the report that's in evidence from Ralph Kalachi that he said he completed prior to leaving shift that night, which was before 10 o'clock at night. He wrote on that form that he found that, and he's trained. He's the person who's had the experience. He has had training both prior to and at the medical examiner's office in order to be able to make these reports for the benefit of the doctor doing the autopsy. He says there was mild rigor. Dr. Utz said that that was indicative of a person who's been dead for as little as 1 to 2 hours. Ralph Kalachi in that report also stated that livor mortis was unfixed, meaning that it hadn't, the pooling hadn't finished settling. And Dr. Utz testified that livor mortis starts within 20 to 30 minutes of death. If you look at the photographs that are in evidence, when investigator Crosby took the photographs of Ralph Kalachi rolling the body over, there's very little livor mortis even visible, meaning that there hadn't been much time for the blood to pool. And then you heard from Dr. Utz, who testified that when he did the autopsy the next day around 10 o'clock a.m., that while he couldn't be certain, he would have estimated that the body had been dead for not more than a day. So that puts our timeline, Your Honor, directly within the time frame that David Trana said that he was gone from the house, sometime after 9 o'clock, but obviously before he arrived at the house. sometime between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock a.m. on April 24th, 2018. Where does the state's evidence put David Tronis? Walking west on Miller toward Orange Avenue, the very path that he told detectives that he took. Citing to Davis versus State, 90 Southern 2nd 629, a Florida Supreme Court case from 1956. Starting on page 630.
This judge has the patience of a saint listening to this. And believe me, I've been in front of judges who they'll cut you off. They'll say, you know, this is not pertinent to your motion, counselor. This sounds like an argument. You can argue and close. Remember, we haven't even gotten to the closing arguments yet. We're going to hit that pause button, my friends, on this long motion for judgment of acquittal. Before we go to break, just a little reminder for you, the Court TV is always on 24/7 on our YouTube channel. And if you missed an amazing courtroom moment, or you just want to get caught up on an episode of our compelling original programming, you can find it all there and much more. That's at Court TV on YouTube.
David Tronis claimed to be a millionaire, but when his wife realized